Now, getting back to the rituals that we've seen enacted during this year's Beltane period, and if you don't understand what Beltane actually is, Beltane is an ancient pagan holiday. It actually goes way back to Druidic times. And during Beltane, what we see is a ritual celebrating rebirth. And this is the rebirth of spring, and pilgrimages to holy wells to make offerings and prayers to the spiritual deities of the wells were also traditional during Beltane and are usually part of the Beltane ritual. Now, what was played out during these ancient rituals was, as I said, tributes were paid to the wells, and we also saw the crowning of the May Queen and the May King, followed by a sacrifice. We also saw, as I mentioned earlier, the end of celebration dedicated to Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and various rituals related to death and rebirth. This, of course, relates to the death of the old season and, as I said, the rebirth of spring. Now, considering the offerings and prayers made to the wells or deities, when one thinks of a well, one may, of course, think about something that you draw water from. But there are other types of wells, folks. Sometimes we think of a well of knowledge, a well of information. But when you really look at the way the world is run today, and you look at the three city-states that control the world, what you see is a well of money, you see a well of spirituality, and you see a well of might, a well of power. And it is these three wells that control the matrix, that control the program, that keep people locked into the illusionary reality that we are currently in. And in these three wells, I, of course, am referring to the three city-states. The City of London, which is the centre for financial control of the world, which is a well of money. The City of Vatican, which is the global centre for spiritual control, which is, of course, a well of spiritualism. And the District of Columbia, which is a centre for military control, and here we have a well of might, or a well of power. And wouldn't it be very strange, folks, if we saw rituals and ceremonies and prayers and pilgrimages and offerings made to these three wells during Beltane of this year? And folks, when we have a close look at Beltane this year, what we find are some very interesting things indeed. Now, the May Queen and the May King and the sacrifice. What we see this year is that Kate Middleton married Prince William on April 29th, and this, just coincidentally of course, coincides with not only Hitler's wedding, but also with the celebration of St. Catherine of Siena becoming the May Queen. Now, after the May Queen is crowned, in this case Kate Middleton, traditionally 2 days later on Beltane, the white cake of the May Queen is cut and a piece is given out to all, but one piece has a black mark or stone on it, and the recipient of this piece, which is called the black cake, is the one who is crowned the May King. And then the lucky recipient of the black cake, the May King, is later sacrificed at the end of the ritual. And this is actually a sacrifice to the pagan god Baal. And I'll get back to that in a moment. But what we see here with this celebration of the May Queen taking place in London is an offering and a pilgrimage and reverence paid to London during this period. London, of course, being one of the wells or deities that controls the world. Now, regarding the ritual of death and rebirth, one of the things we saw take place in this period, just 2 days before the royal wedding on April 27th, was the appearance of President Obama's long-sought-after birth certificate. So here we see the renewing or rebirth of Obama's power as leader in Washington. And right on cue on Beltane this year, on May 1st, we also saw the rebirth of Pope John Paul when he was risen again from the grave and reborn as a saint and beatified in the Vatican. And we also saw Prince William, who was reborn into his new life with the May Queen. So in the Obama birth certificate incident, we see a celebration dedicated to one of the wells, of course being the Center for Military Control, the District of Columbia, and Well of Might or Power. In the beatification of Pope John Paul to sainthood, we see a pilgrimage and prayers and offerings made to yet another of the wells in the form of Vatican, the well for spirituality, or at least for the control of spirituality. And we also see a rebirth ritual for Prince William at the other well, London, the Centre for Financial Control and the Well of Money. Now, regarding the third main ritual of Beltane, which is the end of celebration dedicated to the goddess of the hunt, what we saw was the reborn leader, President Obama, suddenly proclaim the end of the hunt of the world's greatest villain, Osama bin Laden. And in Washington, D.C., we saw a pilgrimage and celebration that ensued, mainly around the White House, which is just below the Cydonia district, which is located just above the White House, which is, of course, shaped like an inverted star or pentagram. So again, we see the third main ritual of Beltane taking place, and we also see a pilgrimage and a celebration and an offering made to one of the wells. Now, folks, you've got to understand how these rituals work and how they need the energy of the population to power the ritual, because it's all about energy harvesting. Now, all of these rituals that took place on or around Beltane, and all at just the right time, such as the celebration dedicated to Catherine of Siena and the crowning of the May Queen that took place 2 days before Beltane, all of these rituals were all very public, and all of these rituals were unknowingly powered and celebrated by the enthralled and therefore attending millions around the world via the attention these people paid to these events. And all of those who attended either in spirit or personally the wedding of William and Kate, all those who are celebrating the victory over bin Laden's death, and all who are in a state of fear and paranoia over the possibility of a new false flag attack, are all playing right into the hands of the architects of the New World Order. Because all of these people are feeding these rituals, and it is this energy that is required to perpetuate the matrix. Can you see this, folks? All of these events are done to harvest energy, every single one of them. And of course, it may not yet be over. And I return now to the celebration of the May Queen and the May King and the sacrifice. Now, in this case, many may perceive Osama bin Laden to be the sacrifice that is required for the end of the festival of the May Queen and May King. But then I don't recall Osama bin Laden eating the traditional black cake. But very interestingly, at the royal wedding, it just so happens that William enjoyed a special groom's cake this year. Apart from the rest of the crowd, it was a black cake that was the same type of cake that was favoured by his mother Diana. And so this would indicate that Prince William is the May King. And this may also suggest that the ritual is not yet over, and that perhaps the sacrifice that we are going to see will be Prince William. Perhaps on May Day next year, or perhaps even as suggested by the late Rick Clay, we will see a major event happen during the 2012 Olympics in London. This would, of course, pave the way for Prince William to be the new solar deity for the next cycle. Diana would appear as the revered mother, the way we see Christ and Mother Mary being the solar deities for the last cycle. And the death of Prince William may possibly signify the founding of Zion, which is very likely to be the London Olympic grounds. and this is of course supported by the poem Jerusalem by well-known Freemason William Blake, in which he states, "I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land." The word Zion itself translates as New Jerusalem, and after the amount of depleted uranium that's been dropped on Gaza, I certainly can't see them attempting to found any type of New Jerusalem anywhere near the vicinity of Old Jerusalem. And look, folks, by referring to Christ and the Virgin Mary then as the solar deities for the previous cycle, I'm not belittling Christianity in any way at all. I'm simply attempting to explain to you how these people operate. Because until you can step back and pull away the veil of any belief system that you have, you're never going to be able to see how things work and how this system is run. You're never going to be able to discover how the matrix works until you set aside all of your beliefs and begin to look at things holistically with a completely open mind. And I think it's about break time here now, folks, so that's a little bit for you to think about for the next couple of minutes, and I'll speak to you again after the break. Thank you very much for listening.